You are Locked On Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, your team every day.
And hello and welcome into the Braves POSTCAST, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta and part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Grant McAuley, Jake Mastroianni with you, and if you're here, then your team is the Atlanta Braves, and they were victorious in Houston. Stop me if you've heard that somewhere before. Stakes a little bit higher the last time this happened, but nonetheless, the Braves starting out their three-game series against the Houston Astros here in 2024 with a victory behind Darius Vines, some timely offense, some good work from the bullpen, a little bit of everything helped it happen on a Monday night in Houston, and we're going to talk all about it on this edition of the show. Before we get started, make sure you leave us a like and a comment on this video. We appreciate those. Share the show with a friend and subscribe to Locked On Braves wherever you get your podcast and to the Locked On Sports Atlanta channel right here on YouTube, so you'll get every edition of the show on both of those formats, and you can go ahead and enable those alerts here on YouTube, and you'll know every time we drop a new episode of the show. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance with all the parts you need at the prices you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home the huge wins. Find it all at ebaymotors.com. Jake, the Braves found it all in Houston. It was the timely hits. It was good enough pitching, certainly, and I guess a winning combination for the Braves here in the opening contest. And what we kind of wondered what it was going to look like with Darius Vines on the mound. How would he do against a challenging Houston lineup? I think he pretty much passed this test.
And early on, it looked like we were in for a slugfest in this one. And I thought both pitchers did a pretty good job of settling down after struggling early on in this game. Darius Vines included, almost got through that fifth inning to qualify for the win. But otherwise, like you said, kind of battled in there and was able to give the Braves a chance to win.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about Darius Vines. I think had the score been what it was in the end, if he'd had a bigger lead, would have gotten a chance to work through the fifth. But I don't think there was any playing around that was going to go on for Brian Snitker in a one-run game in the middle frames, knowing that he was probably going to have to rely on his bullpen to do some heavy lifting. They did that in this game. They really passed the test, I felt like, as well. And all of it added up to a Braves win. And it got a little bit more one-sided there in the ninth inning as the Braves just started working over Josh Hader, which is always fun. I think the Braves enjoy doing that. He is not an easy guy to get to, but every once in a while, the Braves have shown that he is, in fact, mortal. And in a non-save situation, he did not look the best in Houston on Monday night. The Braves will take it, though, in their 6-1 win over the Astros on Jackie Robinson Day. Before we dig into everything, always love to talk about the history of this game. We just got done celebrating the 50th anniversary of Hank Aaron hitting number 715, but it was way back in 1947 when Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier, and a trailblazer, one of the great people in baseball history, Jackie Robinson. It's always great to celebrate his legacy, and I'm glad we continue it with the number 42 on every player on this special day.
It is special on this time every year. And you mentioned we just celebrated Hank Aaron and the celebration of 7-15. And that's the two pitchers behind me. My old camera shot, you could see it with Hank Aaron rounding the bases over here. And on the other side of me is Jackie Robinson stealing home in front of Yogi Berra. Just two iconic players that meant bigger than the game. And glad that we're able to celebrate this each and every year.
Most certainly. You brought up Yogi Berra in that play and that picture. I don't know if you're familiar with this, and some of our listeners may be as well, but I love the history of the game. Yogi Berra continued to sign that 8x10 of Jackie Robinson sliding into home plate in that World Series, and he would always inscribe it with "he was out" underneath it. So even decades later, Yogi Berra was still not ready to let that thing go, but he was getting paid to sign the 8x10, so I guess you'll take it where you can get it, most certainly. The Braves, meanwhile, will take the wins where they can get them, and they got one in Houston. Atlanta's offense got busy in the ninth inning and stacked up those 4 runs that made this look a little bit more lopsided. Jake, you mentioned both of the starters looked a little bit wobbly in the early going. And for Darius Vines, who we'll get to a little bit more in our second segment when we kind of break down his entire performance and what it means going forward, once he was able to start commanding the strike zone a little bit more, and as he went along, I feel like he just started to get more comfortable.
He did. And look, I'll be pretty honest. Early on, those first couple innings, I didn't think he was going to be around much in this game. I was wondering when we were going to see Jesse Chavez come in because he just didn't have much command of anything. But he did. Credit to him. He settled down. He started to get some swings and misses on that cutter running off the plate from righties. The changeup, which he was leaving up a lot in this game, he started to bring it down a little bit, and that's the pitch for him, is the difference maker that can definitely get some swings and misses.
Yeah, it really is. And that I think is really what makes Darius Vines the pitching prospect that he is. It's not coming out with high velocity and piling up strikeouts that way. It's commanding multiple off-speed offerings and trying to fill up that strike zone. He wasn't able to do it, I think, quite as much as he would have liked to at times in this one. But when he needed to just rear back or dig down, I guess, and make a pitch, again, it's not about throwing hard. He was able to do it when he needed to. And I think that's something that he can build upon as he moves forward. And the Braves continue to assess what exactly they're going to do in rotation. And we will get to that a little bit more later. The Braves bullpen, meanwhile, backed him up and made that 2-1 lead stand up for the majority of this game. Some great work by then. You mentioned, when are we going to see Jesse Chavez in this game? If things got dicey early, maybe. Well, things got so comfortable late. Raisel Iglesias was able to sit down, and Jesse Chavez closed this thing out.
That was huge for the Braves. Obviously, they had to use a good bit of their bullpen yesterday to close out that game in Miami. So to be able to give Iglesias a night off, save him for hopefully a chance on Tuesday to get a save, or the Braves could give it another big win, that'd be nice as well. But, anytime you don't have to use your closer on back-to-back days, that's certainly a win when you get wins like that. But this bullpen in particular, I think is a highlight of this game. We talked about Darius Vines a little bit in the job that he was able to do to kind of bridge that gap, but the bullpen to come in like they did and to shut things down. This felt like a playoff game. And I heard AJ Minter talk about it afterwards, that he felt, said it was a playoff atmosphere. I thought Brian Snitker managed this like a playoff game. The fact that, as you said, as tight as it was, getting Vines out of there that second time through the order with Jordan coming up, going to the lefty there and Bummer to get Jordan, and then Kyle Tucker the next inning, going to the righty Pierce Johnson to get the righties in the middle, bottom of their lineup, and then bringing in AJ Minter to once again get those two lefties at the top. I thought this was brilliantly played by Brian Snitker. He gets a lot of flack sometimes, as managers do when they mismanage the bullpen, but this was certainly a case where he pushed all the right buttons.
He did, and it kind of felt like that 2021 postseason run where, the Braves, they got what they could out of the starting pitcher, and then it was, trying to find the right matchups for the right guys and hoping that they're going to be able to do their part. Aaron Bummer did his part. I don't think you could let Darius Vines in a one-run game face Jordan Alvarez again there. It felt like a pivotal point of the game. Bummer took care of that. Pierce Johnson got in a little bit of trouble, was able to, I think, make some big pitches when he needed to. And as you mentioned, AJ Minter coming in, all he has done this year, I think, I know he gave up that home run a couple of outings ago, but all he has done this year is continue to show why he may be, bell to bell throughout the course of the season, the Braves' most important reliever. And it's been that way for a couple of years for AJ. This was just another example of that on this night.
And he's another guy, his contract up at the end of the year. He'll be a free agent at the end of the season, and he is coming in and showing that he is still that top of the line reliever. And don't know what the future holds there, and it's still really early, but he's gotten off to a great start. We mentioned it a couple of times now. To me, it's some of the best pitching I've seen him do in a Braves uniform. And he's done a lot of good pitching in a Braves uniform, and really excited what the season could bring for him. And again, we'll see what the future holds, but what another great outing it was from him.
It definitely was. And as we got to the ninth inning, that's when the Braves offense decided that it was time to score a few more runs, because both of Atlanta's runs came in the top of the second. They both were a little bit unorthodox. I mean, this wasn't the Braves' powerful lineup hitting a bunch of home runs or even a bunch of doubles in the year 2024. They're doing a lot of that. It was getting a run on an infield hit. It was getting a hit batsman with the bases loaded that gave them that lead and trying to make that stand up. And then it was a consistent parade of singles that came mostly at the expense of Josh Hader in that ninth inning. One of those belonging to Marcell Ozuna right after Hader was lifted from the game. That extended Ozuna's hitting streak to 14 games. That's the longest in Major League Baseball this season. It also gave him 22 runs batted in, which leads Major League Baseball. And wouldn't you know it, after hitting a 3-run homer in the ninth inning to give the Braves a come-from-behind win, on a day he got 3 hits, it was a broken bat single in his final plate appearance that allowed Ozuna to continue his hitting streak.
Yeah, baseball's that way sometimes, but it was a bit of a frustrating game offensively for a while there. Braves were just waiting for one of the best relievers in the game to come in so that they could get some hits off of them and pile up the lead there. But I think both offenses, or I thought early on, both offenses will be kicking themselves for not doing more in the early part of the game when both starters seemed like they were on the ropes and really neither team could come up with that big hit. But we talk about it all the time with this Braves lineup. They're going to continue to put pressure on the other team, and you give them 9 innings, at some point you feel like they're going to put up that big number.
You definitely do. We talked about Darius Vines, 4 2/3 innings of 1-run ball. Well, Spencer Arrighetti, who was on the mound for Houston, He gave up those 2 runs in the second, but 4 innings for him, a couple of walks and 5 strikeouts. It just seemed like he was keeping the Braves just off balance enough to avoid the big inning. He was able to do that, but not able to avoid the loss that was charged there in game 1 of this series. We got a lot more to get to on this edition of the Braves Postcast. We'll get back inside the line score, the box score of this game, talk a little bit more about Darius Vines. Also, we're going to talk about the Atlanta offense, some good trends there, and we'll get you ready for game 2 of the series. All of that is coming your way as the Braves Postcast continues. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride going. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home the huge wins. That's ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available in the U.S. Monopoly Go is the smash hit mobile game that lets you compete with your friends and get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's a Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress with your friends. So much to do on this game. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. You can make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. You can also charge other players rent for your iconic properties. All the things you love about Monopoly. You can even work with your friends to crack open community chests in tournaments and get extra rewards and climb that leaderboard. Download Monopoly Go now free at the App Store or on Google Play. Well, the Braves gave the Astros everything they could handle, pulling away late for a 6-1 lead in game 1 of a 3-game series. They did so on a night they had somewhat of an unproven commodity on the mound in Darius Vines. So let's talk a little bit more about what we saw from him, as we talked about a little bit of trouble locating at times, but a solid overall performance in his first outing at the big league level in 2024. 4 2/3 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 3 walks, 4 strikeouts, 80 pitches, 46 of those strikes. I think that this might be enough if the Braves decide to go this route to maybe give Darius Vines another look, but they could, of course, assess their other options and figure out exactly how they want to approach Spencer Strider's spot in rotation.
Yeah, I think that's still something that they're going to decide, but maybe Darius Vines did earn himself another start here. I think the biggest thing for Darius Vines in this game, he had to grow up on the fly in this one in many ways. He didn't have the control, the command early on in this one. He had to find it, and he did for the most part. It did get better as the game went on. Another thing he had to learn in this game, how to hold runners on. I mean, early in this game, they were just taking off on him.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't even paying attention, and throughout the game, you saw him throw over a little bit more and worry and focus a little bit more on those runners over there. Obviously, you don't want your pitchers worrying too much about that, but you got to at least show the guys you're willing to throw over or give them a nod. And they were just taking off early in this game. But getting back to, Darius Vines, what he's actually doing on the mound, throwing the ball, talked about it yesterday. To me, it's the cutter changeup combination for him and the fastball up. You want to throw the fastball at the top of the zone, even though it's, low 90s, and working the cutter off of it away from righties into lefties, and that changeup just had some really good diving action to it. And when he does that, he can be a really effective pitcher, but you got to be able to command that. You got to be able to show that you can throw those pitches for strikes. He wasn't able to do that early on, but once he started to get the chases on that cutter. He got 6 whiffs on 9 swings against that cutter on pitches that were just running off the plate away, and that changeup, which he was leaving at the top of the zone early on, even getting some accidental strikes up in the zone on the changeup early on. He started to get it down and got that working as well. So again, you see what he can do, but I thought the biggest thing for Vines in this one is that he had to grow on the fly here, and he did, and was able to work into the 5th inning.
Yeah, he definitely did. And 80 pitches, so a little bit to build on there. And again, as you look at what he was doing, I like that you brought up where the changeup was located. Sometimes maybe not exactly where he wanted it, but maybe unorthodox enough to just kind of keep the hitters off balance, not expecting that particular offering to be where it was put. But you can kind of understand why, if you're Brian Snitker, you also don't want to tempt fate too many times if you see certain pitches or certain counts or certain hitters that are starting to get a little bit more dialed in on a young pitcher who, as you mentioned, is still kind of learning on the fly. Only 2 starts at the big league level last year, so this is first one in 2024. Darius Vines still very much a work in progress, But on this night, he was able to give the Braves enough in a 6-1 win. For the Braves in this game, 6 runs, 11 hits, no errors for Atlanta. They left 10 men on base, did the Braves. The Astros got just 1 run on 7 hits, 1 error, 8 men left aboard for the Astros. The winner is Aaron Bummer. He is now 1-1. Spencer Arrighetti takes a loss, drops to 0-2, and no save in this game, which lasted 3 hours and 7 minutes, and it felt every bit of that, despite being a 2-1 contest heading into that 9th inning when the Braves scored 4 times to pull away. As you look at the offense for Atlanta, something that I think everyone was kind of waiting to see, when is Reynaldo Acuña Jr. going to start piling up some hits? Well, 2 more hits, and that makes 3 multi-hit games from the 4 contests on this road trip. He has raised his batting average 55 points if you're into that sort of thing. But, Jake, something I like about what I've seen from Reynaldo Acuña Jr., especially in the last 4 or 5 games, really kind of dating back to that series against the Mets as well, he has started to hit the ball harder. We talked about this yesterday, but good to see another 2-hit game for Ronald, who had a double and a run scored, also drew a walk. So doing everything you need the leadoff man to do, reaching base 3 times in 5 trips, that'll play every day.
Yeah, it seems like he's getting on base 2 to 3 times a game right now, whether it is, getting a single or a walk or 2. It seems like he's doing his job at the top of the order. And this is another example of that. I mean, he's still a tick off, even in that at bat, that long at bat where he had the walk. There were several pitches in that at bat that when Ronald's on, those pitches are going where Jorge Soler hits them. But either way, he's able to at least fight those off. He got some tough fastballs up in the zone that he was able to fight off, worked that at bat, had a good double later in the game on a pitch, kind of down and in that he's able to just kind of shoot the other way in typical Ronald fashion. Doesn't go down as a hard hit, but it was like 91.2 miles per hour. So still, struck it very well. There are definitely signs of life coming for him. And like I said, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's hitting 288 right now. And we are, still sitting here wondering, when is he going to get going? Did have a couple of strikeouts tonight, had done a much better job of that over the weekend, cutting those down. But again, there's signs, it's coming. We all know it. And when it does, we're all going to be excited and here to watch it.
Yeah, a couple of strikeouts tonight, but only 2 in the prior 6 games. So as you can tell, that little rash of strikeouts that he had over about the 4 or 5 game span, that has been cut down drastically, and the hits are starting to add up for Reynaldo Acuña Jr., who, again, is pushing his batting average up close to 290, and we'll see what he does over the final couple of games against the Houston Astros before the Braves come home against the Texas Rangers later this weekend. Ozzie Albies, no hits in this one, but a very big hit by pitch, which knocked in a run. It gave the Braves the lead. That turned out to be the decisive run in this one, even though Atlanta did score 4 times in the 9th inning, as the hit parade was definitely on there. That was quite the showing. And I know that, closers can struggle in non-save situations. I don't know what to make of it. I don't know how to explain it exactly, other than when it happens, you feel like you should have known that it could happen. But when it doesn't, and they throw a nice quiet inning and just keep it a 1-run game, nobody bats an eye. But for Josh Hader, it was not the latter. He gave up a bunch of hits, a bunch of hard hits in this game as well. Orlando Arcia with a big one as well. And then you had, as you look through Marcell Ozuna with the RBI single that extended his hitting streak in this one. Austin Riley had a run-scoring single as well. The Braves were just able to pretty much turn it on, and as the old saying goes, and around Braves country, keep that line moving in the 9th inning, and that will certainly work.
We talked about Brian Snitker pushing the right buttons here with the bullpen. This one, he also in that 9th inning pinch hit Adam Duvall, who got the walk to get things started. Pinch hit Orlando Arcia, who came in and got a hit. The Braves got a walk and 4 straight hits in that one, in that inning. And then you mentioned the Ozuna hit later on. And then Michael Harris beating out a potential double play ball to drive in another run as well. I mean, he was over 5 on the night, a bit of a rough one for him, but still hustling there at the end, push another run across, which, made it even more comfortable for the Braves to not use Iglesias and go with Jesse Chavez. So, everything kind of adds up there, but this offense, as we talked about, it's relentless. It's all 9 innings. They're going to keep coming at you. And that's exactly what they did here against, again, one of the better closers in the game.
And to be honest, with the Harris double play ball that he was able to beat out, making the difference between 4 and 5 runs, that could have very well been the difference. And whether Jesse Chavez or Raisel Iglesias pitches in this game, and after Raisel did have to come in the finale against the Marlins, which again, you don't mind because it's a game you won, it's nice to not have to use him in game 1 against the Houston Astros. When we continue here on the Braves Postcast, we will start getting you set for game 2 of this series, as the Braves and the Astros will meet in Houston on Tuesday night. We'll get you set for that pitching matchup, talk a bit about what Reynaldo Lopez has done this year, and, of course, what the Braves are looking to do by securing another series victory as their road trip continues. And we continue on the Braves Postcast. Let's get straight to the point. If you want to grow your portfolio to deal with the rising costs of inflation and to pay off debt and your mortgage, pretty much anything that is standing in your way of financial freedom with Yahoo Finance, you can do that. You can get access to news, data, and tools that you need in order to help reach that financial freedom. And whether you are a seasoned investor or looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and all the data you need in one place. For comprehensive financial news analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor at yahoofinance.com, the number one financial destination. That's yahoofinance.com, yahoofinance.com. Braves and Astros meet for game 2 of this 3-game set. That'll be happening on Tuesday night. 8:10 is the first pitch, and we've seen, Jake, some really good things from Reynaldo Lopez in 2 starts. I guess the question is, to start things out here in our discussion about game 2, can he do it again?
That's the question. I mean, look, he's been great in his first 2 starts. I'm not taking anything away from him, but it was a White Sox offense that was struggling, or is struggling, probably will struggle all year round, and a Mets offense as well that was struggling a lot coming in, even though they looked pretty good otherwise in that Braves series. This is definitely going to be the toughest test for him so far, and it's an Astros team that, look, until this past weekend, they were kind of scuffling a bit themselves, but we'll see what he can do. Obviously, that fastball command is big for him. If he's able to get ahead with that pitch so they can get the chases on the slider, that's what he's looking to do. And that's, something that's been obviously worked very well for him. And that curveball as well, when it's on, it can get some whiffs. And that's the third pitch that he's really trying to get developed so that he can get through a lineup a third time and get work deep into games like he has the first 2 this year. So would love to see more of the same. Braves kind of need it with all the bullpen that they had to use on Monday to get the win there. So they're certainly hoping that Lopez can give them another 6-inning outing. Would love to see that happen. And the Braves go ahead and try to, get the series win. You got Max Fried on Wednesday as well. So you feel pretty good about that in your back pocket.
Yeah, you've got it lined up, I think, the best way that you can at the moment. Clearly, the Braves are having to make changes to their starting rotation. That's why Darius Vines got that start in the opener. I think he did enough of his job. The bullpen handled the rest. Reynaldo Lopez has tossed us 2 6-inning outings. You mentioned maybe not against the toughest offense that you're going to find, so Houston will certainly be a challenge for him, but it's a team that he should know pretty well from all those years of pitching in the American League with Chicago. And if you look at the importance of Reynaldo Lopez, all of a sudden, he's not just the Braves' 5th starter. By default, he is now at least the 4th starter. And depending on how he pitches over the course of the season, he might become even more important than that. And I think that's kind of interesting to monitor as he continues to transition back to starting pitcher after 3 years in the bullpen. This is kind of a work in progress for him. But the first couple, again, I do think he's passed the test, and he has shown the arsenal, I think, that will lead to some success in the rotation, even if you can't necessarily bank on every start being quite as sharp or quite as good as the results have been for the first couple. It just looks like he's comfortable in the role again, and that goes a long way.
It does, and that's the biggest thing for him. And I know he's talked about it as well, is working deep into that game, saving some of that velocity for deeper in the game as well. It's an adjustment for him, something he's done a lot in his career when he was once a workhorse for a couple of seasons with the White Sox as a starter, but something he hasn't done in quite some time. So it is something he's familiar with, but having to refamiliarize himself with it. I like what you talked, or I think I agree with what you were talking about there with he could very well pass Charlie Morton with what we've seen from him so far.
Right.
Curveball is not as effective as it has been in the past, but the start that he's had on Sunday, obviously very early for all of these guys. I mean, if Lopez continues to do what he's done so far, there's a chance that he becomes much more valuable in this Braves rotation.
He's certainly become much more important. There's just no way around that. But the same can be said for Chris Sale, for Charlie Morton, and even for Max Fried in terms of what the Braves now need out of that 4 as they figure out that 5th spot. And as we've talked about more than we want to thus far in the first couple of weeks, and with the news about Spencer Strider, the Braves did not want to be in the position here in April again of trying to figure out how they're going to replace one of their most important pitchers. They had to do it last year with Max Fried. They had to do it with Kyle Wright. Then Fried got hurt and was out even longer. And Wright really never came back to factor into the rotation. So the Braves are familiar with this. And Brian Snitker said way back in spring training, I tell all these guys at our team meeting, all these pitchers, look, you're here in camp for a reason. We had to use 16 starters last year. 3 of them were openers, sure. but we're going to need you. So go get your work in the spring and be ready over the course of the season, because you never know who can be called upon. And we've already seen for Alan Winans and for Darius Vines, 2 guys that saw big league time last year, 2 guys that were in major league camp again this spring. They were called upon very early, and the Braves may continue to kind of work that problem a bit. And I still feel like at some point we're going to see Bryce Elder start to factor into this mix. I'm just curious as to when exactly that's going to be.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see who they start at Gwinnett on Tuesday, because Bryce Elder got scratched on Saturday and Sunday in Gwinnett. And so there's a potential, if you started him on Tuesday, he could pitch in a game this weekend in that series, depending on how the rotation kind of lays out, if that were the case and what the Braves wanted to do. But as we said, with Vines and what he was able to do on Monday, maybe they give him another opportunity in the rotation this weekend against the Rangers at home. But yeah, we'll see on Tuesday who Gwinnett starter is going to be, if it's going to be Elder or not.
Yeah, and you got to point out as well with this that Bryce Elder's last minor league start was April the 6th. So he really needs, I feel like, at least one more outing before you throw him to the wolves, as the saying goes, and bring him back to the major leagues against a lineup, regardless of who it is, but let alone the Texas Rangers. That could be a challenge if you haven't worked in nearly 2 weeks. So I do think that they're going to look into doing something that will get Bryce Elder prepared. And if we see him pitch on Tuesday, as you mentioned, that could line him up for at least consideration for the weekend or next week as the Braves start to sort this whole thing out. But we know they're going to have to make some kind of plans in this 5th spot of the rotation with the way things have been going. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like, you can really pick a good time for an injury. You certainly wouldn't have picked Spencer Strider to be that guy. And the Braves are just going to have to find the right guys at the right time, maybe a combination of them, even though that doesn't seem to be the ideal thing, to try to at least band-aid this situation until you can get to the point where other teams might consider making a trade. But Jake, you and I both know, the impact arms, not only are they hard to acquire in terms of the cost of them, but nobody's giving them up at this time during the season. So I guess I say all that to say, long story short, you kind of have to work with what you got right now. But if you're in the situation the Braves are, the depth is good enough, I think, for them to get by.
Yeah, and before you really go, externally, there's still a lot of arms in the system that I think are going to get a chance first. And as you said, nobody's really going to give up much of anything at this point in the season. I do think the Braves, I'm sure they would prefer somebody to take hold of that spot. I don't think this whole plan of bringing somebody up in case they're going to pitch in long relief, if they don't, then they'll start here. I can't imagine that's good for the pitcher. I think Winans and Vines have both handled that okay. But to be called up and say, hey, if we need a long man in this game, you'll pitch. If not, you're going to start on this day. In my opinion, that doesn't really sound like a good plan for these starters, going forward. I would imagine at some point, one of these guys is going to stick in the rotation. They're going to get a long run at it to see what they can do and see if they can hold it down.
Yeah, just a little more continuity. I know I've used that word more times than I've ever thought I would say that word in my life over the last week or so with Spencer Strider going out, but that's the job for this starting rotation. That's the job for the Braves, to figure out how to have the most continuity they can, 1 through 5 in the rotation, and having to pivot and make these changes and make these choices with Spencer Strider out. Wasn't anything anybody signed up for, but like you said, I'm hopeful that somebody can just step in and earn that spot so that they won't have to call guys up, have them sitting around kind of wondering, then get them ready. I don't know. Maybe I'm old-fashioned and I feel like you should prepare people for the job, dress for the job that you want, so on and so forth. Maybe that's just the way I look at starting pitchers as well. On the other side, you've got Hunter Brown going for the Houston Astros. 0-2 in 3 starts this year with an ERA approaching 17. He has allowed 15 runs on 23 hits in 7 2/3 innings. He's also walked 7 batters. This is an extension, Jake, of what he was going through last year as he struggled for the Houston Astros. It's a live arm, a really nice starting pitcher, but he is having a lot of trouble getting outs.
Yeah, it's really an interesting profile, a top prospect, and he had 178 strikeouts and just 155 2/3 innings last year, but a 5.09 ERA. So he's somebody, it looks like when he's missing with location, he is getting hit extremely hard. He's also struggled a bit with walks this year, almost a 14% walk rate at 43, throws his fastball 43% of the time. Braves have struggled a little bit with fastballs at the top of the zone. Riley struck out on one in a big spot tonight. Acuña, as I mentioned earlier, having a little trouble getting to those high fastballs. So we'll see if that's something he tries to take advantage of against this Braves lineup. But he is certainly seems like somebody, when he's missing with location, he's getting hit really hard, but he certainly has some swing and miss stuff when he's on.
Yeah, power pitcher, but very inconsistent is Hunter Brown. He'll get the ball for the Houston Astros. The righty's 0-2 this year. It'll be Reynaldo Lopez, the right-hander, on the mound for the Braves, 1-0 in his 2 starts, a 0.75 ERA. First pitch in Houston at 8:10 p.m. Eastern Time. That brings us to the end of this edition of the Braves Postcast. As always, we appreciate you riding along with us. After each and every game, we're able to do this, so make sure you're subscribed to Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube. Enable those alerts. You'll get notified every time we drop a new episode. And you'll also get the audio version of the postcast on Locked On Braves. So make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Leave us those likes, those comments, and share the show with a friend. That helps the show grow. Once again, the Braves with a 6-1 win over the Astros in Game 1 of this 3-game series. We'll be back at it on Tuesday. For Jake Mastroianni, I'm Grant McAuley. So long, everyone.